about a month ago, I was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. I had a lump that was removed. It was found to have a cancerous tumor, and thankfully we did a whole bunch of other tests. The cancer hasn't spread anywhere, so really happy about that. In my case, I have the doctors and I have decided that I'll be doing a double mastectomy, which I'm going in for on the 4th of May, because my risk of recurrence is quite high. All of that aside, what I want to say is that I've learned a lot through this process of stuff that I didn't know, and I'm thinking that if I didn't know it, there's a possibility that there's a bunch of other people out there that didn't know it either, and so I thought that this should be something that I share. So, number 1, check your medical aid. Oncology benefits don't come out of your normal day-to-day cover. It's a separate part of your medical aid fund that will only be activated once a doctor has diagnosed you and sent that diagnosis through to the medical aid. You want to know what those oncology benefits cover, how far they cover, etc., etc. Check your medical aid oncology benefits. Number 2, if you have life insurance, check whether or not there is critical illness cover. If something drastic happens to you, a critical illness, generally part of your life insurance will pay out, and obviously that depends on how you've structured your life insurance. In certain cases, if you get a critical illness, a one-off payment benefit will be paid to you, and obviously you can imagine that if something does go wrong, having that money is quite helpful, especially if the medical aid doesn't cover everything. We've all heard the horror stories about how expensive chemotherapy is, or whatever. So check your life insurance. If you've got critical illness cover, what is it? What does it look like? Obviously, especially for cancer. Check with your financial planner. Check for yourself. Income, if you have an income protection plan, disability plan, whatever the case is, again, just take a look at that and think about it. If something like this happens to you and you need to be off work for treatment or hospitalization or whatever, it is very helpful. You probably would have to take unpaid leave somewhere along the line. It is helpful to know that you would have some kind of income benefit and that you would still have an income. So the financial stuff is stuff that people don't really tell you. The financial stuff is, we get the breast cancer awareness about, your body and what you should do, but not the fact that someone's going to have to end up paying for this. So the financial stuff, I think, is quite important, and do that first. Draw up a family tree and make sure you know why every auntie and cousin and granny died. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, people weren't talking about breast cancer. So there is a possibility that there were women in your family that may have died, and it was considered, diagnosed, or thought of as something else, or just not spoken about. So draw up a family tree and take some care about how, the different people, the experiences and the health of the different people, obviously, especially the women in your family. Genetics testing is quite new. In most cases, your doctor will only recommend that you go for genetic testing, obviously in terms of the BRCA genes, if there's a history of family, of breast cancer in the family. Your BRCA genes or your breast cancer genes, they are there as control gates. So if your body develops cancer, your BRCA genes are supposed to prevent that cancer from growing. Fine. If there's a mutation in those genes, obviously it means that your risk of getting cancer is a lot higher. So, you don't have anything to prevent that from happening. Mutation in your BRCA1 gene can increase your possibility or your chance of getting breast cancer up to 85%. So it is quite significant. If there is a history of breast cancer in your family, go for genetic testing. Take a look around. There are genetic counselors at a lot of doctors and hospitals. Have a chat to a genetics counselor who can give you an indication of whether or not you should go for genetic testing. Check your BRCA genes if there are any mutations, and that could have a significant impact on on you. If you're under 40, the risk of getting breast cancer is a lot lower. And I think that's what, you know, a lot of women, and I know myself, felt like I was safe because I'm under 40. Yes, I think about 7% of the women who get breast cancer are under 40. So it happens a lot less. But at the same time, if you do get breast cancer under 40, you are at much higher risk. The recurrence rate of cancer is a lot higher. The growth rate of cancer tumors and, you know, cancer cells are a lot more aggressive when you're under 40, and the fatality rate is higher. So although you're at a lower chance of getting breast cancer when you're under 40, if you do get it, you're at much higher risk than you would be if you're over 40. Interestingly, one of the big reasons why we've elected a bilateral mastectomy for me is because I'm under 40, and it's a significant risk of recurrence for me, and I don't want to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. I have some genetic variances in my BRCA2 genes as well, which doesn't help. So it puts a recurrence rate, for me, the risk of recurrence is about 25%, which is quite high, and we don't want to go through that. Again, if you're under 40, we're told, you know, that you don't really need to go for mammograms. And, you know, basically what we're told is go for mammograms when you're over 40. What I thought that meant was that you didn't really need to do this before you're 40. But what I've learned subsequently is that the younger you are, the more dense your tissue is and your skin is, and therefore the mammogram is less likely to pick anything up. So the younger you are, the less effective the mammograms are, and that's why they're not prescribed for people under 40. In my case, a mammogram did not pick up the tumor that I had. It did not pick it up at all. So if I had have relied on a mammogram alone, I would still, you know, I don't actually really want to think where I'd be. If you're under 40 and there's, you know, you have any kind of worries, go for an ultrasound over a mammogram. You know, the older you get, the you know, your tissue starts thinning out, and that's when a mammogram can pick, you know, is more likely to pick something up. So, you know, the younger you are, ultrasounds over mammograms, you know, the younger you are, the less likely a mammogram is going to be to pick anything up that there could be. If you do have mammograms and they come out okay, that's great. But at the same time, you know, don't be complacent about the fact that there might still be something going on. If you have any kind of indications or anything funny is going on, or something's not normal, don't imagine that, oh, but I had a mammogram that was fine and everything's okay. And we don't have a tendency to look after ourselves very very well. We miss appointments. We don't go to doctors. We don't do our checkups. We assume that we're indestructible, and that if something's wrong with us, it's all going to be okay, and it's just a twinge, or it's just a this, or it's just a that, until the day that it's not. So, yeah, my consider this my little mini awareness campaign. Check your finances before you start scratching at anything. Don't scratch at anything until you've sorted your finances out, because if you find anything, you want your finances sorted out first. And then take a long, good look at your family, your history, look after yourself, and pass that type of message on to other women that you know, and to family members, and that, so that, you know, we can make sure that we're operating with good information rather than perceived information that I found to be incomplete and in some cases incorrect.